and welcome. I'm Michael, and I want to wish everybody a happy new year. Thank you for being here. On this channel, we uncover creepy, chilling, and unexplained true stories, the kind that stay with you long after the video ends. We're a new channel, and I really have a passion for researching these kind of stories and events and really sharing them with all of you in story form. If you're drawn to mysteries that really don't have easy answers, please hit that subscribe button and join our community and help us grow. It would be great to have you with us. Now, before we start, let me ask you a question. If you were hiking a trail and you reached the point where every warning sign, spoken or unspoken, tells you to turn around, what would convince you not to turn around? What would convince you to keep moving forward? Because on April 1st, 2014, two young women did just that. They passed the last safe viewpoint. They stepped beyond the point where help is nearby, and they walked deeper and deeper into a jungle known for disorienting even the most experienced guides. And what they left behind is hundreds of failed emergency calls, photos taken in complete darkness, and remains scattered miles apart. And this has confused investigators, experts, armchair detectives for over a decade. And the evidence that they left behind tells a story far darker than most people realize. Now, Kremers and Lisanne Froon were not reckless thrill seekers, and that's important to understand right from the start. They were 21 and 22 years old, and they're from the Netherlands. And both of them are actually Dutch college students at the time as well. Now, they were very organized, very intelligent. They were known among friends as very careful planners, not impulsive risk takers. And they had really mapped out this 6 week long trip, which was part vacation and part charitable giving. They mapped out this trip very diligently. They wanted to explore an adventure, but also wanted to give back while working with different charities along the way on this trip. They actually worked for 6 months leading up to this trip at a cafe back home to raise additional money to go on this trip. Now, before their trip, they planned obsessively. Housing arrangements, volunteer schedules, language courses, emergency contacts, and even backup plans in case things fell through. Their families later confirmed that both girls were the kind of people who checked in regularly and avoided unnecessary danger at all costs. Now, Panama was meant to be a very structured adventure. Boquete, a small mountain town surrounded by rainforest, it felt very calm and controlled. Now, tourists, they came and went. Retirees actually settle there every year. It just grows. And this wasn't a place that was really known for or associated with disappearances, at least not yet. Now, they arrived in Panama on March 15th. The first 2 weeks that they were there, it went beautifully. They did a bunch of traveling, they had a great time. They're working with different charities, and everything's going according to plan. And by the second week, they arrive in a little town called Boquete. And they stay at this hostel. Now, a hostel is basically like a group living situation, and it's extremely common amongst travelers from all over the world where basically you all, but very popular. A lot of people do that. Now, on the morning of April 1st, Kris and Lisanne decided to take a short hike on Pianista Trail. Now, they wanted to go on this fairly significant hike, which is it's around a massive volcano called the Baru volcano, which is actually Panama's highest peak. So it has amazing views. The overlook is breathtaking, and they were just dead set on going on this hike. Now, this part matters. So El Pianista isn't some forbidden jungle path. It's very well known, frequently hiked. It's often recommended to tourists, and a lot of visitors will actually hire guides to ensure that they stay safe on the path to avoid, a cliff drop off or, just kind of losing their way on the path. But for whatever reason, they decided that they didn't need a guide. Now, The hostel owner had a dog that knew the area very well, and they decided to bring that dog with them on this hike. It was a very friendly dog. They packed lightly. They basically had one backpack, one camera, two phones, no food, no rain gear, no survival equipment. It's just supposed to be a quick hike in and out. Now, they basically expected to be back within just a few hours. By mid-afternoon, they reached the Mirador. Now, this viewpoint marks a shift. So up to this point, the trail is very forgiving. After all, after that, the jungle basically takes over. Locals say that the terrain past the Mirador feels very different. It's quiet, heavier, and it's more closed in. And most hikers, when they reach that point, they turn back. Now, Kris and Lisanne did not turn back. And once you pass that point, there's really no signs around you telling you how to get back. Now, Kris and Lisanne did not return that night. And when the owners of the hostel and their new friends basically noticed that they weren't back, there was no immediate panic, although things just weren't adding up. After all, hikers, run long. They underestimate daylight. Their phones lose signal. You know, and now, but by the start of this, they're taking a bunch of pictures as their journey begins. Now that night, the dog returns to the hostel, but the girls aren't with the dog. And this alerts the owners of the hostel, and they begin to search the immediate area. They're looking around for the girls, but they can't find them. So they decide to wait until the morning to see if maybe the girls are going to turn up, but the girls don't turn up. And additionally, the parents of the girls, they were used to getting very regular text messages from the girls to kind of let them know, just stay in touch, let them know that everything's okay, we're safe. But even the text messages stopped, and so that alerted the parents as well. So by the next morning, when they still hadn't arrived, basically something just felt off, didn't feel right. They missed a scheduled tour. Their room was completely untouched. Their phones went straight to voicemail. Now, by late morning, local police were officially notified that they're missing. And these are really kind of the first signs of trouble. Now, at 4:39 p.m., Lisanne's phone tried to call emergency services, but they had no signal. Shortly after, Kris's phone tried to contact them as well, but still nothing. Now, this timing is unsettling because it suggests that something went very wrong and suddenly, not gradually. There were no messages that were sent to friends or family, no photos indicating any distress, no indication that they realized that they were lost until it was too serious, till it was almost too late. Now, over the next several days, their phones attempted over 100 emergency calls. Now, some calls lasted seconds, some were immediately dropped, and many happened late at night. And this will make sense here in just a little bit. Now, one phone was turned on briefly, checked, and turned off again. And they did this repeatedly, over and over again. And what that's telling investigators is really just one thing, is that they're trying to save their battery. They're rationing battery. So, which means that they believed that rescue was possible. So whatever happened to them, they thought that there was hope. Now, local officers and volunteer guides, they moved fast. They searched the El Pianista Trail, the Mirador viewpoint at the very top, the peak, the ravines just off the main path, and rescuers really expected to find them sitting somewhere injured, right? Just in need of help. Maybe they're a little dehydrated, they're simply waiting, but instead, what they found is nothing. No footprints off the trail, no signs of falling or being injured. Basically, by sunset, rescuers had still found no sign of the girls, and that should have been reassuring, but in this case, it was not. So by day three, April 4th, the situation was no longer treated as a routine missing hiker case. The search expanded dramatically. Specialized jungle rescue teams, they were deployed to search. Helicopters conducted aerial sweeps over very dense rainforest. They were using thermal imaging that was in hopes of maybe spotting some heat signatures to locate the girls. Rivers, ravines, cliffs, cliff edges, they were all inspected. Over 100 people took part in this to try to help find the girls, and still nothing. No calls answered, no signals detected, and no visual confirmation. And what made this worse was the terrain. The jungle canopy was so thick that even the helicopters could barely see the ground from up above. And from above, everything looked the same. Endless green, no movement, no landmarks. And rescuers really described it as searching an ocean for a single ripple, if you will. Now, at this point, a full week had passed. This was no longer a rescue, it was a race against time. Now, by this stage, it's all out in search mode. Helicopters thundered over the jungle canopy from the air, and like we said, everything looked identical, and so this was making it very, very difficult for them to locate the girls. What once there was a lot of radio chatter, but by this case, radio chatter is basically increasingly grim. There's really nothing to talk about. Now, meanwhile, something horrifying was happening unnoticed, right? So during this exact time period, the girls' phones were still actually trying to call for help. They were still alive somewhere while helicopters were passing over by. And they likely saw the helicopters. They were close in time, but they were unreachable. Now, this is where things get really bizarre. So on April 8th, exactly 1 week after the hike, the camera came back to life. So between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m., 90 photos were taken. Not during daylight, but at night, in the dead of night. And most of the photos show nothing recognizable whatsoever, just pure darkness, leaves, rocks, some water. But really, even though there wasn't much to stand out in these photos, a few things did stand out. One shows the back of Chris's head, and her hair appears to be tangled, possibly dirty, possibly bloodied. Not sure. Another photo shows plastic bags and a strap tied together, almost like an improvised tool or a marker of some sort. One photo shows paper laid carefully on a rock, not dropped, not scattered, but placed very, systematically, very strategically. And that level of intentionality is really what keeps people awake at night. These photos don't look like panic. They look like problem solving, if you will. And then just as suddenly as they began, they stop. The camera is never used again. Now, at this point, the families begin to arrive. So when the families arrived from the Netherlands, the tone had really changed. So this was no longer procedural. It was personal. Chris's parents, Lisanne's parents, they walked the trail themselves, trying to see if they could find anything or see anything. They stood at the Mirador and looked into the jungle where the daughters vanished into thin air. Now, what they couldn't do is they didn't accept the fact that the girls were just simply gone. So they paid out of pocket for additional search and rescue. They're desperate, trying to find their children, doing everything they could. They hired private search teams, indigenous trackers that know the area very well, jungle survival experts, and searches expanded far beyond the official zones that they were originally searching. And the families believed one thing, that the girls simply kept walking. So now, by this stage, we're 40 days out. So after more than 40 days, the official search was called off. There were no new leads, there was no evidence, no confirmed location of the girls. Authorities had to face a reality that no parents should ever hear, that if the girls were still alive, they were no longer reachable. And the jungle, unfortunately, had swallowed the trail. It had just eaten them whole. Now, by this stage, 2 months had passed, and unexpectedly, something surfaced: the backpack. A local woman actually found a blue backpack near a riverbank. Now, it didn't look lost, it didn't look damaged, but inside were both of the girls' phones, the camera, cash, sunglasses, Lisanne's passport, um, and everything was dry. It wasn't dirty. It was very clean, despite weeks of rain. Investigators were stunned when they made this discovery. Now, this is where things really begin to get dark. Soon after, remains were actually discovered, not together, not near the trail, but scattered. A boot was found with a foot still inside of it. Now, DNA confirmed that that boot, that foot, it belonged to Lisanne. Now, later, bone fragments were recovered as well. A pelvis, rib fragments, parts of a leg, and some bones showed no tissue whatsoever. It's completely clean. They were described as unnaturally clean, almost as if they were bleached. Now, because of this, there was also a lot of forensic confusion. Experts could not agree. Some said that this was due to animal activity, other water exposure, others natural decomposition, and others quietly admitted that this just doesn't match your typical jungle remains, if you will. Now, Kris's bones appeared to show phosphorus traces, something sometimes associated with chemical exposure. Now, no official explanation was ever confirmed on this. No cause of death was ever determined, and authorities ultimately claimed that they simply got lost and fell to their death. Now, when the families were informed of this, unfortunately, their hope completely just shattered and collapsed because they had clung onto the idea of survival, that they're alive somewhere, waiting to be rescued. But the remains ended that. Kris's parents asked one question: how did they survive for days and leave no trace whatsoever? And that's one of the questions that nobody could answer. So, what really happened? Did they become disoriented and walk deeper instead of back? Did one fall and the other refuse to leave? Stayed by her side? Did they encounter someone that they shouldn't have encountered? Or did the jungle do what it does best? Confuse you, isolate, and erase. Because once you pass the Mire door, the jungle doesn't really give second chances, not in this type of environment. And till this day, there's just many questions that go unanswered. If you look at those pictures again, it weaves and shows just it looks like an awful lot like someone else was taking those pictures. It does not look like they took those pictures. Somebody was trying to access Crewman's phone toward the end there, and someone looks like they were using the camera as well, not the girls. And the backpack that was found, it just seems like it was almost staged there, put there in place. And all the signs point to foul play, in my opinion, but all of these just add more questions about the case and what actually happened to them. But claiming that they simply just got lost and fell to their death seems like really the most far-fetched theory out there. Kris, Kremers, and Lisanne Froon didn't disappear without a fight. That's one thing that we do know. They tried to call for help, they conserved their power, and they documented their final nights. And somewhere beyond that trail, the jungle still holds the truth. So that's going to do it for this story. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments section below what you think may have happened to Kris and Lisanne. Now, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps our channel grow. It'd be great to have you part of the community, and I will see you on the next one.